Hello, today I wanted to talk about strawberries. In a previous video, I talked about a specific strawberry, the Eversweet Everbearing strawberry. It's a strawberry that I really like for where we live because we live in Oklahoma. It is highly heat tolerant. It will tolerate temperatures in the hundreds. It's fairly drought tolerant. This is the picture of it in the video right now. And we had a very dry, hot summer last year, and my berries did come back. Now there is some stuff I do need to clean up, but considering what we had going on through the summer, they look really good. And since this is early in the season, we're just coming out of winter, they're looking pretty good. So, Junebearing and Everbearing are the two main categories of strawberry. Everbearing being a plant that produces the bulk of its harvest around June, much like a Junebearing that produces a large harvest in June and then it's done until the following year. The Everbearing, while it does produce the bulk of its harvest around the same time, it will continue to produce on a smaller level through the fall. So I like that just for the reason I like to have something that I can not only have a big harvest to process, freeze, jam, whatever, but I like to also have some that I can just have fresh throughout the season. July, August, still having a fresh strawberry that's not store-bought, because the store-bought are usually picked prior to being ripe because they do have to ship them. If they picked them at the peak of ripeness, they would be rotten by the time they got to the store. So I do understand that. However, it does create a difference in taste. You're going to get strawberries that are much tartar in the store, sometimes not nearly as much flavor, but it really has to do with the time that they pick them rather than variety of strawberries. So with the Everbearing strawberries, we have a few varieties. We have about 6 varieties of Everbearing strawberry. We have an Ozark Beauty, which is also does fairly well in this area, but it doesn't have quite the heat tolerance or drought tolerance that the Eversweet has. The Ozark Beauty, they will produce about 4-inch berries. They are good for zones 4 through 8. They are very prolific, so they will spread pretty well once they're established, and that's something you have to determine. How much spread do you want and where you're going to put them, if that's possible. They also are pretty disease resistant. It is a good strawberry. I just felt like for the Eversweet just worked much better for us, especially where we had to put our strawberries. They were going to be exposed to much more heat, so I needed something very heat tolerant, which brought us to the Eversweet, which is self-pollinating. Like I mentioned before, it can tolerate temperatures in the hundreds. It's drought resistant, and it's also very disease resistant. It grows in zones 5 through 8. And it is really hybridized for the southern climate. So while it will grow up as far as zone 5 in the north, it really is geared to more of a southern climate. Charlotte is another type of Everbearing strawberry. It produces a firm berry that has a good shelf life. It grows in zones 3 through 8, so it'll do very well further north. Once it is established, it has a very fast growth. We also have what's called, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, strawberry. This is another variety of the Eversweet. It will grow in zones 7 through 8, and each plant will produce about 1 to 3 pints of berries per plant. So it's also very disease resistant, especially to crown rot, and it also is a self-pollinating strawberry. Then we have Fort Laramie, and that is one that I have seen quite a bit in stores like Tractor Supply, who they sell boxes of different plants, and I've seen it a lot in pots at Lowe's, the Fort Laramie. It grows in zones 3 through 7, so it does really well in the north, and Oklahoma would be the bottom range of its appropriateness. Once you get down below Oklahoma, you're getting in Oklahoma. We're at the bottom. We're right there at zone 7. So you're not going to want to go past that. So we're right at the edge of where it will do well. And it is actually, they do say it's good for a northern climate. So it is actually geared to more of a northern climate, even though it will grow here. But Oklahoma does get some winter. But if you're in an area that stays pretty warm throughout the year, you don't really get those freezing temps, this would probably not be the best strawberry for you. It is also good for containers and hanging, and that is one of the other reasons you see it, is because you can use it as a container plant. You can use it in the hanging baskets, and they will withstand heavy winter, which is another reason I say it's really probably geared a little bit better to the north, because it will withstand a heavy winter, and we don't usually get that down here. Then there is also an Everbearing Seascape. This is good for zones 4 through 8. The strawberries will be about 2 ounces, so they're a big strawberry. And this is also a plant that is good for containers. And the last Everbearing strawberry we have, and this is really going to be for tropical climates, or what they consider subtropical climates only. It's not going to do well in someplace like Oklahoma. It would only be an annual. It would not be a perennial. It's called Festival. It is for zones 9 through 11. So it's going, down into Texas, the lower part of Texas, into Mexico, places like that. It's not something you really, for the most part, want to grow in too many parts of the United States. You have to have a very warm environment for it. It produces very high yields. Now, it will, of course, grow in coastal, the deep south, and tropical regions, and it does refrigerate well. But someplace like Oklahoma, this is not something that's going to be able to survive the climate here. So now I want to move on to the types of Junebearing strawberries that are available. We have one called Wendy. Wendy is good for zones 3 through 8. It has large berries. It has great cold tolerance. It produces high yields, and it is a vigorous grower. It will have a May to June crop time. So when I say vigorous grower, a vigorous grower in strawberry is going to be more like your mint, where they can be pretty aggressive in their growth, and you kind of have to stay on top of them. The next one, I hope I am pronouncing this right, is Hanoi. It is good for zones 3 through 8. It also produces a large, firm berry. It's highly productive. It is winter hardy. It freezes well and is disease resistant. And this is one I see actually a good bit around here for a Junebearing. Is called Jewel. It is good for zones 4 through 8. It does produce a very sweet, large, firm berry, but it is also winter hardy. It is self-pollinating, and the berries do freeze well. We have Chandler. Chandler is good for zones 6 through 9. So this is a good southern variety of Junebearing plant. It produces really well per plant. It produces about 1 quart of berries per plant. So you can get pretty good harvest with your plants. It has a very intense flavor and large berries. So if you're going to go with Junebearing in our area, I would probably pick the Chandler strawberry over many of the other ones. Now, some of these that I am mentioning, you can't necessarily find them in the stores. You do have to go to some of your traditional mail order places that you can order online. But I prefer to buy my strawberries that way anyway, because I find you save a lot of money per plant by buying them through mail order than buying them in the store, especially with how easy, even though they are shipping you a dormant root, with how easy you can revive them and get them to look just like that plant that you see in your garden center. I would far prefer to do that, especially since for my container I have to do a good 100 plants or so. I'm looking at instead of spending $500, spending, depending on the company, maybe $80. So it's a huge savings for me not to buy them in the store. Okay, so our next Junebearing is called Sparkle. It is zones 4 through 8. It's got a sweet and tart flavor that is very intense. It has high yields. It's got a medium-sized fruit, and it is disease resistant. And our last Junebearing strawberry is Early Glow. It is for zones 4 through 8. Again, medium-sized berries, has excellent yields, disease resistant, and it is ideal in the Mid-Atlantic, Midwest, and North. And if I remember from my research, I believe this was the one that did well even without mulch through the winter. So these are just some of your options that are out there. Now, these are not I have not mentioned every Junebearing strawberry that's out there. And there may even be a couple more of the Everbearing strawberries, but I wanted to give you an idea of what's out there. And my favorite places to order strawberries online are either Gurney's, Burpee's, or RH Shumway. I have tried in the past, like where you could get plants really cheap on like eBay, and I don't recommend it because you're not getting something with a good root system. You're getting this little tiny plant that just this little seedling plant with hardly any roots, and they just did not survive well. So even though you're not getting, you had greenery on it, but even though when you buy that dormant plant from, say, Burpee's that has no greenery on it, but it has such a thick established root system that the money I supposedly saved really wasn't even worth it. Like, I could get a root system for $1.50 from Burpee's, equal to the size of the 10 plants that I bought for more. So even though it looked like I was getting it cheaper, it really wasn't, considering what I was getting. And the same with buying maybe off Amazon or someplace like that. So I do recommend buying off of an established company like Burpee's, Shumway, and Gurney's that have been around for over 100 years. Now, not to say that some of your smaller places won't do well, but then I would recommend going through a local. And like I said, you're going to pay a little bit more per plant. But if you don't want to mail order and mess around with that, you want to actually see a plant in person, then go to either a local nursery or someplace like Lowe's or Home Depot, any place that has a garden center, and get them there as opposed to ordering them off of Amazon and eBay, from my experience. Some people probably have had okay experiences, but my experience has either been really good or really bad. And I've literally had where I bought something from the same people, where one group was good and the next batch was awful. So I just would prefer to stick with those three major companies. So if you have any questions, please drop it in the comments. Like and subscribe, and check us out on our Facebook Ranch page, and have a blessed day.